love the channel and find it useful in becoming a happy retiree. Subscribe today. Phil joins us from Marietta. Phil, good morning. How can we help?
Good morning, Wes. I talked to Ryan, and he did the tax calculation for me, and he said about $5,400. But so he said the interesting part of my question is because I asked, am I going to do that when I file my? Am I going to get that when I file my 2017 tax? He said no, you won't get it till you file your 2018 taxes in 2019. But he also said that.
Well, let's do this. Hang on, just as you did, Phil, just for a second, because of radio magic, no one else has heard your numbers here. So, as just an example, let's kind of just do a quick overview of what your scenario is here. So, your income is about how much?
A little over 200. And
you're Georgia.
Correct.
Married, filing jointly, right?
Married, filing jointly. 3 children under 18.
3 children. Okay, so small nuance in these tax changes. The kids have to be under 17, just so you know now. So
okay, they are.
Okay, and you're obviously under 65, and you do itemize. How much do you pay in property taxes, and then in other itemized deductions?
Well, property taxes are about $5,000.
Got it.
Then mortgage interest is about $8,400.
And you have 3 little, okay, so no other dependents, but you have 3 children under the age of 17.
That's correct.
Oh, right. Okay. So in this scenario, we have a lot of folks out there listening in a similar scenario. You've got a high family income, but you've got several children. And one of the biggest changes, I feel like I say this on all these provisions. There's so many big changes. One of the many giant changes, child tax credit goes from $1,000 to $2,000. You got a lot of kids, so that matters. And from what I can show here, what I can see, you get about a $5,500 tax cut. Now, for next year. But to your question, well, what does that mean? Does it show up immediately or not? And this is what's interesting about thinking this through. And this is what is powerful about the way we're doing these tax cuts. And there was debate on this. When does it start? There are large debates, especially on the corporate side. The Senate and the House went back and forth on when the tax cut would get implemented. In the individual's case, and this happened on the corporate side too, or will happen on the corporate side, the tax cut starts right away. So technically it starts in January. From most CPAs I talk to, and I'm not a CPA, and most from what I've read is that you'll start to see the withholding change in the February timeframe. Maybe not in your first paycheck or two, but pretty quickly companies and payroll providers and payroll consultancies will get the new withholding numbers fixed or adjusted starting probably in your February paycheck. So the way I look at this is pretty quickly you're going to start to see. So if you take a $5,500 tax cut and you spread that out over the course of, let's call it 12 months, it might look more like 11, but you're going to see an extra $460 in your pocket on average every month once things start to get adjusted. So it's going to start pretty quickly. And I think the big question here is that for you guys, and this is a question I have for you, and I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, Phil. $500 is not chump change, right? It's not going to change your life with your income level. You're making $200,000 a year. $500 though is not chump change, and then to have $500 extra every single month, that's fairly significant. Have you thought about what you would do with that tax change? Have you thought, hey, maybe I'll spend it, maybe I'll save it? Have you identified anything for that tax change whatsoever, Phil?
We haven't talked about it extensively because I didn't know the number, but we tend to overpay throughout the year and then get a big refund in April.
And what do you usually do, Phil? What do you usually do with that refund?
Save it and pay our property taxes and come October. That's what we usually do with it. So
it's kind of already slated for other tax. I'm getting taxes back to pay other taxes. Welcome to America, right? And welcome to the big city. So, but again, so this will be good for you to start thinking about this. You don't have to, obviously, there's no rush on this, but one thought that I have for individuals that I think can make a whole lot of sense is that you can just up your percentage 401k withholding and not even feel it. So if you're doing 10% a year, you could up that by 2 or 3% and not really even feel and still get a pay increase, even though you're saving more in 401k if you're not already maxing it out. Obviously, what's that?
We're already maxing that. We're already maxing that out.
All right, so this is just going to be extra money that you can either put in after-tax savings or, listen, with 3 kids, I know firsthand that there'll be plenty of ways to figure out how to spend it.
Yeah, right.
I know exactly how it is. I'm going to the Falcons game today, so just to get tickets to that, I don't know. And we went to a preseason game, and then we're going. This is really our only regular season game we're going to, so it's a big splurge to go on a day like today. But boom, there you go. There's plenty of easy ways to spend it when you've got kids. So God bless you. Enjoy 2018. I hope it's a profitable year for you, my friend.
Thanks. Can I ask you one more?
Yeah,
quick
quick.
question?
Yes.
We're about to get an inheritance of approximately. It'll be a few months, but we're going to get an inheritance of approximately $200,000. Is that going to affect our taxes?
No. Okay. Good question. No, it should not, because inheritance. When you get inheritance, it should pass to you tax free, and
okay.
So you don't. It's not as though you get a tax bill for that. There are some nuances with when money's passing from one estate to another. If it's in an annuity, there are potentially some tax considerations, but for the vast majority of times, sometimes the estate will have taxes. In the vast majority of time. In scenarios, there's not going to be taxable income to you because you inherit money. That brings up another point that I haven't talked about yet, because this doesn't apply to a whole lot of people, but the new tax change doubled the estate tax exemption. So the estate tax exemption was let's call it close to $5.5 million per person. Now that's doubled. So now it's going to be, let's call that $11 million per person. So for a family, you're talking $22 million. So before your family has to worry about passing money on to the next generation and paying massive taxes on it, you can effectively pass $22 million to the next generation without having to pay taxes on that. Very big number. Doesn't impact a whole lot of people because there are not a lot of families out there with $22 million to pass on, but another sizable piece of the new GOP tax legislation. Phil, have a wonderful new year, my friend.
Thanks, you too. Love your show.
Thanks. We're going to talk a little bit about a very interesting scenario with Phil, and the reason going into what we're talking about, this 2018 outlook, is that this is over and over and over and over again. This is for every single American, and it happens right away. And when you get an economic stimulus like this, I mean, think about it. Phil's going to get $500 a month. And for Phil and his family, that might not be a game changer, but it's real money. It adds up. And you have to multiply that by 84 million households in America. Some households are going to get a $500 tax cut for the year. Some are going to get a $5,000 tax cut. The vast majority of Americans, 90+%, are going to get either the taxes are going to go down. From what I can tell, you're going to see another 9% of America that taxes are going to stay pretty much flat, maybe down 0.5%. And then you've got about a 1% chunk of the population where taxes may actually go up a little bit. From what I can tell, it's the single high earner at the lower end of the upper 1%. So think about somebody who's a single guy living in Buckhead, no kids, who already has big mortgage deduction and big state income tax deductions, making $400,000 or $500,000 a year, single, no children. His taxes are probably going to go up. But there's not a lot of those folks floating around out there, because when you get into the really high income brackets, $1.5 million, $2.5 million, $5 million a year, that extra 2% at the top, we dropped from 39.6 down to 37%. That's a pretty big number. So if you have a really high income, you're gonna have a 2.4% reduction on what you pay on the vast majority of that really, really high income. And that's a really big deal, or 2.6% tax reduction on a vast majority of your income, and that will likely offset what you lose in your state income tax deduction or getting capped at $10,000. Hi, I'm Wes Moss, and thanks for taking a minute to hear about what's so different about my new book, You Can Retire Sooner Than You Think. So unlike other retirement books, this book will give you a step-by-step guide, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, to learn from what these successful and happy retirees did to get there. I hope you enjoy the book, but more importantly, I know that it'll help you retire sooner than you think.